Hi, welcome to episode 4 of thinkhr's Business Owners Masterclass podcast. This morning, we're featuring discrimination. This is first of a two-part series on discrimination. This morning, we'll be covering some areas of discrimination, how to combat them, what kind of things you need to be aware of as a business owner within your business. I'll be covering much about unconscious bias, and Ben will be going through different types of discrimination solutions you can put in place within your business as a business owner. And why that's important is because if you haven't taken those steps to prevent discrimination within the workplace, then you ultimately become the liable person for that discrimination. It's a very, very important thing. So first of all, I'm going to start you off with unconscious bias. So I always think of unconscious bias as a thing where our behaviours are set out by our beliefs, and those are formed maybe in childhood, and we may not be aware of having those beliefs sometimes. So you, within the first 4 seconds of looking at a person, you create a picture of them. Your brain processes that and decides what that person's like. So and this is very often where perhaps bias comes into play in a way that you're not really aware of. And it's important that we understand how we can, as individuals, change that, or certainly for the workplace, very, very important, because we don't want to discriminate in the workplace. It's obviously not just for the fact of the penalties, but because everyone deserves the right to exist in an equal environment. So I'll give you a simple example. A person who owns a business thinks that men work harder than women. He's recruiting for a new position. He chooses not to hire a female applicant and instead he hires a man, even though the recruitment process showed that the female applicant was the better applicant. Okay, that's just a very basic note on what an unconscious bias may be, and that person had a limited belief that men were harder working than women. Okay, but it could be a range of things. It could be based on religion, on disability. Is somebody capable of the job because they're disabled? So we need to take everyone on, really on their merits, rather than what religion, what race, what gender, what disability they may have. We have to treat everyone equally, and I think that's really important in society on a personal level. But that's my beliefs. So one of the things we need to do is be aware of unconscious bias and make our employees aware of it, and understand that we all, in some ways, have unconscious bias within us. It's just something that's formed from birth, and until you accept that and start to address it internally, then I don't believe you can get past that. There is always going to be that little bit of you. Some demonstrable ways of perhaps overcoming unconscious bias in the workplace is advertising a job in different places where it's going to reach people of a wide range of backgrounds. Then you can demonstrate that I have, put this job out to everyone, really, and so that everyone can apply. For instance, when you're recruiting, there are so many different ways. You can have phone-based interviews. You can look at keeping a written records of why decisions were made, and that for you as a business owner really demonstrates that you're looking at unconscious bias in a responsible way, and you are taking steps to ensure that when you're looking at candidates, or you're looking at promotions, or you're looking at redundancy process, you are considering everyone equally in that, and that you can demonstrate that I haven't, personally taken the decision based on something that could be deemed as discriminatory. So I'll pass over to Ben, who's going to cover a few areas of direct discrimination, I guess, first of all, and then I'm going to come back and talk about indirect discrimination following that.
Yeah, so again, like you said, Adrian, it's massive discrimination within the workplace, because a lot of the times either it's not us doing it, we don't realise it's being done, but again, the onus will always fall on, as it always is, the owner of the business. So when we're talking about discrimination, we're going to talk about the ways in which you can protect yourself and your business from the risk of discrimination claims. And you're never, ever going to stop. Well, I'd like to think we could, but you're never going to eliminate discrimination from the workplace. But the only thing you can do is manage it better and show that you've taken all measures to protect yourself as a business and to show that you've shown staff that it won't be accepted. So I'm going to talk through the kind of policies that tend to be a massive risk when it comes to discrimination. So the biggest areas in which you'll find discrimination within the workplace is normally within the recruitment process, when you're dealing with sickness and absences, quite a lot with annual leave, dress codes, training, when you're doing your appraisals. So I'll start off with the recruitment process. So people don't realise, but you can be seen and be taken to court for discrimination before you even employ someone. If you're doing a job offer letter, for example, and you start saying you've got to be 25 plus, at which you'll have a lot of delivery jobs. They may be needing people that are over the age of 25 for insurance reasons, to drive the vans. However, if you're starting to state you need to be over 25 years to apply for this job, it's an indirect discrimination claim straight off for age discrimination. Yes, there's ways in which you can get around because you are going to need people that are 25 years and over for the insurance reasons, but you can't state it. So there's ways in which you can put things within your policies and scorecards when you're doing the recruitment process to make sure that this isn't the case, but you can't directly go out and say, this is what we need, this is what we're looking for. Within the sickness and absence, again, you're looking at measures, and for me, it's putting controlled systems in place with trigger warnings to make sure that you're not being overly harsh on one person to another, because you may have a gent that's been off 6 times within the past 3 months, but because a lady's took a few days off and a longer spell, then you're hitting them. And you're having to go at them because it's a week within a month period, when actually, if you look at the overall Bradford factor or the trigger point warnings, they've had less sickness days. It's just because it's hit them in a longer period. So the biggest thing for me, and because as an owner, you may not be the one managing these sorts of things. You may not be managing your recruitment process or your job offer letters. You may not be managing doing your return to works or doing your sickness logging. So it's going to be training, and it's training really has to be delved into so that all staff understand that how they act in the workplace has an impact on you and your business. So especially at management levels, like I said, because they are your authority, they're your second in command. So it's incredibly important to make sure that the culture and the respect of your mindset and the business is embedded into your staff. And if you don't show that you're training staff on discrimination, and you don't show that you're training them to deal with things properly, then what you find is you may be the person that ends up in the courts with the claims. And I've noticed that, well, I've seen a few businesses that do this, and you can have equality champions. And I think it's a massive advocate, because these are the people that you'll have that you'll train to spot when things are happening within the workplace, and they'll manage it for you, and they'll start to make sure that these aren't the issues aren't happening. Again, it's always a way of motivating staff to be better, to think more, to understand other people's feelings, whether they are dealing with it directly or whether it's just something that they've heard. And when you're with the equality champions, what you'll find is if they start promoting staff and encouraging staff to report discrimination, as much as you'll have issues at the start, of course you will, like everything, you'll have teething problems. You'll feel like you're dealing with the same thing constantly, especially within certain workplaces. You may feel like it's just constant. it's something's happening or something's being said every single day. But the chances are, once you start reporting it and it starts being dealt with and training is implemented to the business and structured and things are being risk assessed, then you won't have these issues ongoing and the business will be at a safer place, because discrimination claims, they're through the roof. Like on some discrimination claims, there's no cap. Whereas at tribunals, you would normally have a cap. There isn't one. So you're looking at upwards of £20,000 just for something that you may not have even done or you may not have even considered. But this is where I think I want you to delve into a little bit more on indirect discrimination, Adrian, because I think that's the biggest point that employers especially will get caught out on, because they've not discriminated against someone personally.
Sure.
But it's going to impact the business massively. So you want to start talking a little bit about that, Fair?
Yeah, of course. So indirect discrimination, what is it, first of all? So we all perhaps have heard workplace banter, as it's termed, around a business, you know. And very often, you know, sometimes that banter is taken lightly by somebody. You know, they I don't know, they brush it off, or they have a go back at somebody and say something else, you know. And, you know, everything's fine there, but somebody overhears that, and actually the thing they've overheard is something that is against their beliefs. You know, they think that's, you know, discriminatory. And whether that person who the comment's been made to is offended or not, that person themselves is offended because that comment is derogatory to what their beliefs are. So we have to be really on the ball with that and really careful with it, because there are so many tribunal cases where indirect discrimination has become a thing, that you, as a business owner, really need to make people aware of what's acceptable in the workplace and what's not, in terms of what you say, how you approach things, and not just for the person that you're saying things to, but for the people that are listening next to them. You know, it could be somebody across the room, and of course there are many cases, and we're covering some tribunal cases in part 2 of this episode next time, where we'll be going through directly some cases that hit tribunal. And one of the cases I clearly remember was a very high award for indirect discrimination, which was based on gender. So we'll bring those into play in the next episode. For you as a business owner, you're probably thinking, well, you know, how do I do this? What strategy can I implement? And it's more about training. So you need to demonstrate that you've put training into place. So you can do things like equality and diversity training, training around your policies. So just making people aware, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. Once you've done that as a business owner, you then become less likely to be liable for any discrimination case. It becomes more the problem of the employee who's involved in, you know, speaking out of turn, rather than yourself. And that's something very important for you as a business owner or director, to understand and ensure that you're really getting the right toolkit in place to prevent that.
Yeah, and it's very important, even just for the office morale. If you're seen as a business owner that's allowing, and like we said, it's a lot of the time stated as office banter or workplace banter. But if you're allowing someone to feel victimized or discriminated against at any point, it's going to have a massive impact on the morale of the business and the productivity. So if you can show that you're a business owner that's took due care in putting training in place, having regular updates, having these people at the workplace equality champions, and again, backing all this up in a policy like your equality and discriminity. Diversity.
Yes.
I'm mixing words up there. So if you can show that you're putting these things in place, like you said, your staff are going to respect and value you a lot more, which means that you're going to get a more productive workplace. And these issues should be I really can't speak today, guys, but they should be minimized. A big one for me, because I actually had a lady, and this was with discrimination. What you need to realize, and a big thinking point, and this is something that I want you to think about within the workplace, because just because you don't believe it doesn't mean that it doesn't impact someone else's beliefs and everyone's everyday living. Because I actually had a lady that questioned me once, and this was to do with work uniform. So she worked in a high-end jewelers. Well, she owned the high-end jewelers, and she had a member of staff. So they had uniforms. She expected them to come to work in a certain clothing. Hair was kept in a certain way, and she hired agents. And he very much he had the beliefs of a Rastafarian, which this lady didn't take seriously at all, and she didn't think it was a belief system. She didn't.
It's ultimately a religion, isn't it? Yeah.
And she didn't take this, and she was like, I want to get rid of him because he won't stick to the uniform colours that I want. His hair isn't kept how I want it. And I'm just going to get rid of him. And again, it's something that you need to think about, because just because you don't believe it and it doesn't impact your life, if someone sees this as a massive impact on their life and it's a religious belief and it changes their way in which they live and what they believe, and then what you'll find is it can be protected. And if you dismiss someone based on their religious belief, like we've said before, which is ultimately what they can be seen as, then you're gonna be in court. You're gonna be getting discrimination claims against you, which, again, like I said previously, are upwards of £20,000. It doesn't mean all beliefs, because we had one about Star Wars as well at the same sort of point.
I remember that one.
And that it doesn't mean all beliefs.
Somebody believes
are
they're
religious.
a Jedi.
Yeah, we've had a few of them, to be fair. And it doesn't mean that they're all need to be that it's going to be a case of it is a religious belief. But what you need to do, and as a business owner, you need to show that you've at least looked into it and taken it into consideration and then acted on it. And it means that the employee then can understand why you either can't counter for what they want, or you manage it a different way. Because it's one of them things that some people, you have a laugh. I can have, as we say, banter with Adrian, but someone else may see it in a different light. And that's the biggest things when we're talking about discrimination, is no matter what you have or what relationship you have with one person, it doesn't mean someone else has the same one. And someone else's beliefs, even though you feel like they have been giving out banter, for example, within the workplace, there may be certain points that people don't feel as comfortable with. And if you delve into certain topics, it may change within a flicker. And they could have been having banter with the team for the past 6 months, and then certain topic comes up that they really feel powerful and strong about, and it changes everything. So you've got to be really wary of this when you're managing your staff, and when you're going through these talking points and having whether it's a toolbox talk, whether it's regular training in the mornings, whatever it may be, it needs addressing constantly, just so that you can show you took your duty of care and your due diligence to make sure the work environment is a safe and happy place for everyone.
I think inclusion is quite important as well. I've seen quite a few workplaces who are very open to when there's particular religious festivals, whether that be Sikh or Muslim, or they will embrace that within the workplace and try and educate people around what that is, and that's one thing, I guess, when we look at discrimination and understanding other people is trying to understand what their beliefs are before you make a judgment on them, rather than, and that in that way, when people start to understand things, it tends to cut down the amount of discrimination that we see, from that. So we'll be covering quite a lot over on episode 2. I do want to talk about that because there are a number of cases, like I say. Now, one is dress code, and there was a big one about high heels for air hostesses.
Yeah, it was massive.
I believe. Yeah, that was quite challenged in court a couple of times by different people. So we'll be covering that. If you guys would like to get some help with equality, diversity, understanding your business at the moment and how you can change things, what kind of things you can put in place, just pop us an email at thinkhr. Sorry.
Yeah, don't send it to thinkhr. We won't respond.
No, thinkhr@avensure.com. Send us your details and telephone number. You can also call us on our advice line. If you pop over to the LinkedIn page, you'll be able to see the details on there, but you can basically reach us on 0161 527 1000. Okay. And yeah, we're always on hand to advise you, give us some guidance on any employment law matter or health and safety. Indeed, we also advise on health and safety for people.
And what we're going to do as well, and if you are on LinkedIn, it's always worth going over, because today, especially, we're going to put a little post out about different ways in which you can discriminate in different areas of discrimination. And I want people to see if, just so that you get a better understanding of if you're taking this in and if you're understanding it more yourself, we'll put a little poll out so you can see whether you would deem something discriminative or not. So we'll do that question later on. So have a little vote on that, so you can see whether you would have acted in the right manner, or whether, do you know what, I still need a little bit more training on discrimination because I don't fully understand it. Because until you have full knowledge on the topic and you understand what's going on and how you deal with things, or you have legal aid to help you, the chances are you can't expect your staff to, because you can't teach someone something that you don't understand yourself. Other than that, I think the biggest parts for me, because I didn't actually delve into it as much on these points, is that with again, with the dress code, we're not saying, and this is the biggest thing that I want to get across with discrimination, we're not saying you can't do certain things, because we understand in business, because I've had these questions multiple times, where, like I said, with the drivers one, you have to be over 25 for insurance reasons. There's businesses that need you to wear certain uniforms. There's PPE, stuff like that. There are things that are needed within business. And the whole point of what we're talking about is, it's not saying you can't do certain things. There's just ways in which you go about it. And there's policies in which you have to put in place to protect yourself for if someone's coming to you with problems. And the ways in which you deal with them problems and address the issues, that's where you're getting caught out. And that's the majority of the issues with tribunal cases, is they've either addressed it in the wrong way. So they're asking for certain things in the job offer letters, which are deemed discriminatory. They've not followed the procedure correctly, or their policy is awful. And that's normally the places where the businesses get left open. And it's not the fact that the issue was with what happened, it's how it was managed. And that's what we're going to try and teach you a little bit more. Because if you can manage these issues better, the chances are you won't be in court. Well, anyone can take you to court.
Of course, anyone can.
They're free of charge. An employer can take you to court for something that you deem as just a joke.
But if you want to be winning that case, then you need to be looking at what have I done to prevent this case from succeeding from an employee point of view. So if an employee has a complaint against you, how am I going to prevent that complaint from succeeding against me? How am I going to protect myself? What have I got in place? What have I done to demonstrate that I have a policy and culture of non-discrimination?
Yeah. Exactly.
I think I'm catching your disease there. Right?
Oh.
Not being able to speak. Okay. Okay.
But definitely, and like you said, when you are doing these, don't fall short. Don't follow the training. Embrace the culture. Teach, and then don't document it. Because that's what so many business owners do. And it really, it's my biggest pet peeve, because you do all the hard work. You have this amazing culture, and then something will happen. And because you haven't noted it down or documented the training that you've given, the culture embraces that you've changed, the regular updates that you're doing, you're left wide open. And it's not fair.
You've also got to be looking at when a complaint's made, you need to be following due process. So you need to be looking at, how have I handled that complaint? Have I dealt with it satisfactorily? Because that's where you're going to leave yourself open as a business owner as well. Because ultimately, if somebody's complained about something and I've said, well, I'll look into it, leave it with me, and then nothing's been done, 2 weeks later, that person's right, I'm resigning. What? Why?
And it happens more than often,
and it
doesn't
happens so much.
Yeah.
Well, because I told you somebody had, abused me. in verbally, and I'm always upset by it, and you do nothing about it. And when that gets to tribunal, of course, that then becomes a problem for you as a business owner director, because you haven't taken any steps, you haven't handled that complaint correctly. We need to go through a due process and really look at handling it effectively, making sure you ticked all the right boxes, done the right things, and you should do that anyway. Morally, let's say morally, you should be doing that, because you should be taking into account your employees are the most important thing in your business. They're the reason for your business success or failure, ultimately. And you should be looking morally at how can I make that environment the best environment possible for them.
Oh, 100%. And what you need to remember, and I think it's a massive tool, this, to kind of assist you, because everyone, like literally what we're speaking about, everyone has different beliefs and everyone has different levels. So when you're managing and dealing with something, you may think it's sorted. You may think it was a brush off comment that means nothing, but it may have meant so much more to someone else. So I always think that surveys are an incredible tool. So anonymous surveys that you can send out to the staff, just to understand whether your management process, your training, whatever it is you may be doing to prevent these discriminatory acts, that's working. Because if it's not, and you think it is, the chances are you're still going to be held liable. Whereas if you're getting a better understanding of your staff, thinking, do you know what, yeah, the management process is working well, they're not enjoying, they don't believe the training is helping, then maybe you need to look at different training. If it's whatever it may be, it could be the other way around. So I think anonymous surveys are always a good way of monitoring whether what you're putting into place and what you're doing is actually working within the workplace. Because a lot of people will be very held back from, especially with owners, even if it's a small business or a bigger business, people are quite reluctant to speaking directly to a business owner because they're scared.
Well, you're scared of losing your job, or even potentially influencing
different decisions.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes people choose to keep quiet.
Yeah, and
those kind of things. One thing as well with that, Ben, is exit interviews. Very important.
Oh, massive.
So when somebody leaves your business, keeping good records of exit interviews, because sometimes they do uncover problems within your business. And you as a business owner, let's be fair, you don't have eyes everywhere. You're not on the shoulder of your employees all the time. There could be all kinds being said that you're not hearing. And if you from those exit interviews you start to uncover some things that are, you need to address, and then that's good as well, because you're going to retain more staff, you're going to create a better environment, you can start to address things from the fact that people have left and you understand what the problems are. So, and very much quite often in those exit interviews it may be I left because the culture wasn't right. It's a very much male orientated environment, for instance, just as an example, where there's a lot of childish banter going on. Those are kind of comments within an exit interview that you can then look at it and say, how can I address this? What changes can I implement? How can I make that better so that people feel more comfortable coming to work on a day-to-day basis?
100%. And like you said, the feedback is always going to be, even if it's negative feedback towards the business, like you said, with the culture not being the right fit, whatever it may be, it's good feedback for yourself, because if it's something you can address, then you're not going to have that constant stream of people leaving the business. You retain your staff, which means that recruitment cost, which is always the biggest cost of a business, lowers. So it is something to be very, very cautious of within the near future, doing your exit interviews, managing your policies right. And policies are a big one, though. And because I just want to quickly touch base, because I know we've not got much time left, but especially with the age discrimination, because a lot of people used to have retirement dates within their policies, which you've got to make sure that they're not in there anymore. So if you're working on old policies, the biggest thing that I'm going to say after, if you've listened to this or you watch this later, just have a look over your old policies.
And feel free to send us your contracts or your handbook.
Yeah.
And we'll have a look at it. We'll review it for you. thinkhr, Avensure.com, attach a copy of your standard contracts handbook. We'll have a look at your policies for you, do a review for you. We'll do a red pen exercise, give you, that policy's right, you need to change that. We'll literally do that for you. And if you need a little more in-depth, we can arrange a consultation.
Yeah, 100%, because the chances are you think they're fine. whether you've used them or you've not used them for 20 years, you think they're okay. And it's not until you get that external eye over it that you start to uncover the issues. And again, before you have these pressing issues within the business, you may be okay right now, but when you need to use your policies, that's when you realize that they're not up to date, they're not compliant. So feel free to send them across. We'll do a little red pen exercise on them, a little critique, and get them sent back to yourself to normally arrange a call just to understand a little bit about what you need to be implemented and changing just to be protected and safe as a business.
And just explain things to you as well over the phone, or ultimately we can arrange a meeting with you if you'd like. So we'll need to wrap things up, guys. We're at half an hour. As I said, in the next exercise.
Hey, it's rubbing off onto you today.
It is. In the next episode, we're going to look in depth at some tribunal cases that include discrimination. I wanted to make it a two-part feature because it's so important in the workplace that you get this right. And it's such a big thing. If you look at tribunal listings, you'll see discrimination features quite heavily in those of varying types. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are watching on YouTube. Please subscribe, give us a like. It helps us grow as a podcast. We are relatively new. We hope you're enjoying the content. Please do also send your feedback to us at thinkhr at avensure.com. Ultimately, that's the point of call. If you need some advice on any employment law issues, send us an email, or you can contact us by telephone. Ben?
Yes, and the number is 0161 527 1000. And like I said, even if you've got the smallest of questions, the biggest of questions, throw it at us. If it's a bit of constructive criticism, feel free to do that as well. But yeah, we'll be here again in a fortnight's time.
Yeah, roughly a fortnight. Yeah. We'll put the dates out on the YouTube channel, on LinkedIn. Be a fortnight's time. And yeah, we look forward to speaking next time. Let's say we'll have a few cases that we're going to go through in more detail based around discrimination. We'll give you some solutions and talk about what the people did right, what they did wrong, and how they could have prevented it. Okay?
Lovely. It was a pleasure with you all listening, guys, and we'll be here in a fortnight's time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.